Good afternoon, folks. We are live and up and running for the stream today. Let me get everything switched over and we will jump into today's session of drawing. Alright, I'm going to put on the chill BGM playlist today. I think we're good to go. Hey, Dr. Liam's here. What's up, Dr. Liam? Welcome to the stream. And Dr. Liam says, draw the sexy horrors. I'll do my best. I don't know what you find sexy, but maybe we'll get there. I had a couple ideas going into the stream today for some stuff I wanted to try and draw. It's gonna be kind of an experiment, but I want to draw a Hydra-inspired creature first. But with more of kind of a horror theming to it. So what we'll do is we'll start by roughing in some shapes and then see where we go from there. Kind of play with the perspective a little bit and see, but we'll start with some rough shapes. I see we have clarification from Dr. Liam all about that Cthulhu. Oh, more tentacles means more affection. not exactly sure if I'm going to commit to this particular perspective, but I would like to have kind of like a foreshortening type of look where maybe things are kind of changing perspective coming from like the main part closer to the camera. And I don't really mess around with perspective a ton when I draw, so that's why it's going to be an experiment. Dr. Lim says, I will now go and engrave a tramp stamp onto the Statue of Liberty. Hey, don't do that. She's a classy lady. Ooh, I got an idea. I'm gonna scrap this. I have a little bit better place to start. I'm gonna start with the heads. And we'll just figure out where the body's gonna, or neck and body's gonna go. Because I kind of want to nail down a design for what I want these things to look like. Are you really evil, Dr. Liam, or is that just your character arc? Are you the community's heel? I see. A new character arc, followed by, we can only proceed or predict it's going to be the redemption arc. More evil? If you say so. Your diabolical plan revolves around gas stations, huh? In this economy? Good luck. Okay, we're going to keep a similar kind of theming to the heads, but they don't need to be identical. I'm gonna have to elect Dr. Liam the official representative of the Monster Lovers Club. Hey, out there. Maybe we'll go more straight horns. It says, like, look at those kissing jaws. All right, I got one for you, buddy. This one's got a nice long tongue for eating ice cream. Dr. Liam says I must go commit tax fraud now. All right. Well, you're heading out. Thanks for stopping by. This one's probably going to take me a while, but I think it'll be an interesting experiment. We'll do is we'll make one of the common themes on the heads, even if they don't have identical shapes, but two sets of eyes, 4 eyes total. Okay, let's put some kind of guidelines for rough shapes here. I think I want wherever these are going to be connected to, somewhere down here. Put another head over here. There, we'll have this one kind of pointed up in this direction. Four heads. Maybe you could fit another one over here. Now this one facing the opposite direction, just like this one. Hey, Lava's here. Lava redeemed small Raku mode. Ooh. Alright, how's it going, Lava? Welcome to the stream. Hope you're having a decent Friday. There. Now put the timer on. We'll give this one horns too. gotta think of how I want to actually design the necks. I'm thinking will be kind of like thicker lines with texturing, maybe some highlights running down the middle. See how that works. So I think we'll do a kind of heavier stroke just to get the shape where it needs to go, and then we'll worry about how we're going to detail it once we actually go in there. Let's start with 5 heads. Let's see what that does. I think that should do about there for the thickness on these. They're not too bulky. They don't take up too much space. Let's clean that up a little bit. All right, timer's up. Based on the perspective here, body's going to be off camera, off shot, somewhere down here. Let's add a little bit of kind of detail around where the neck connects to the head. The idea is that they're not really floating. These are all connected. I know from the design, it kind of looks like these are skeletal Hydra heads, but they're meant to be regular, organic, not bone. Otherwise, I'd be doing the necks differently. Yeah, I like that style. We'll go with that for how we sort of add texturing and whatnot to the rest of the necks. I think we need to build that out a little bit more. Yeah, there we go. Okay, we're gonna put these same circular highlight sections going along the neck. We'll add it to the other one too. That's gonna be kind of like a color glowing highlight. go. Okay, keep repeating the same design elements on the other heads. And I've been thinking about some ways to add additional detail around them, since there's no background for these. So we'll see. You also have to think about color paletting for this one, since I do want to put like the undertone layer that has colors in addition to the glowing circular sections, which we'll do one by one. Maybe a mix of greens and blues. Alright, gotta do this one too. Oh, we gotta put the color highlight sections, the circular parts. So doing groups of 2 going kind of down the lateral side of the neck. Okay, make sure to save our progress. Maybe we could put like some background details might be a challenge, something this big. But we'll see. Once we add the color, it'll seem kind of a lot more filled in. Alright. I'm gonna add the eyes next, and then think about how we're gonna do colors, the highlights. Maybe we can do like a tealish highlight. You already did one that was more green. Alright, I'm purposely not putting this on a separate layer because I want the colors that can go underneath to actually pass below the layer with all of the highlights and the eyes. See how that works out. Alright, a couple more. Alright, we'll save that. Now we're going to put another layer underneath. What will be a good color? Kind of the main body color. You can go dark blue. This would be like a water element. Hydra, that could work. Hey, first time chat from Kufenki? Did I say your name? Saying someone's committing tax fraud. Interesting. I don't mind that. Dr. Liam says that all the time. Pretty sure he'd be in jail by now if it was legit tax fraud. But hello, welcome to the drawing stream. We are drawing horror-ish themed creatures today. This is a relatively new drawing style for me, so I am practicing and seeing what types of things we can come up with. Kind of looks like hair in a way. Not really the intended effect. We just want to add color underneath so that it's not completely flat. Ah, Kavink says, just animating? You're an animator, huh? What kind of animations do you do? A couple of my mutuals and friends are animators, and that is not something that I can do, so I have a lot of respect and props for people that do animation. Ooh, fight scenes, huh? There's definitely a lot of detail and movement to capture in fight scenes, like animation or anime style, or kind of more of like a realism thing. Anime style, gotcha. That's dope. Do you have a place where you post your work, Kufenki? Ah, I see you don't have like socials or anything. I see. Gotcha. I do have a community Discord. Usually I share that out. People who hang around the streams for a bit. So I can share that in the future if you end up hanging around for a bit. All right, let me save here. Hey, thanks for the follow. Hopefully you enjoy your time amongst the Space Bee community. We're pretty chill here. All right, I think that's all the color I want to add. Now, as far as background details go, usually when I do these, I just have static images on black backgrounds. I could show off some of the other stuff I've done. Kufanki asks, question, is there a reason you're pretty cautious with the Discord? If you don't mind me prying. Usually I see streamers just plugging it in chats. Yeah, we've had a couple issues between me and some of my peers with people joining our Discords and then spamming people with solicitation requests for work or shady links or compromised things that have hijacked accounts. That's why. We've had a couple instances, actually it was last year, the year before, where I had to change my Discord command because people would join, just use like !Discord, join my Discord, and then start like blowing up every member with, hey, would you like a drawing commission, or would you like an animation or VTuber model commission or something? And that happened a couple times, so I had to lock it down. They're out there, so that's why. It's nothing against you personally. Just unfortunately, some people kind of are trying to make a buck. Kufanki asks, is this common among streamers, or were you just unlucky? It wasn't just here in my community. I've got a group of people that are part of kind of like a small streamer group, and it happened on their servers too. And they're bigger than me. I'm a pretty small VTuber, but their community Discords had people coming in and not just trying to like spam people with solicitations, but actual like hijacking accounts and hacking people. It's not super common like every day, but it's happened a few times. Okay. I think I'll leave this one without a background since we don't normally do that for these. But not bad results for practice. So to give you kind of an idea of what we've been doing with this particular drawing style, since again, this isn't really my default style for drawing or creating things. Let's put this in a new folder, and I'll show off a couple of the ones we did on previous sessions before we start a new one. No, you're all good, Kufanki. It's perfectly fine to ask. I know that's usually one of the first things some other streamers throw whenever people show up or raid or whatnot. I'm actually really bad about remembering to promote my community Discord, but no problem. Alright, so let's hide this one. On last time we did one of these, which was I think a month ago now, we did one of these in this style. We have a bee creature of sorts, and this one was kind of fun to do since the community name for my people is the Space Bees. There's always bee themed art or things people make, and every once in a while I'll do one. This would probably be good for an album art concept in the future if I remember that it's here. Similar style, like a two color palette on this one. I like doing the base layers in white because it shows up against the black background well, and then the yellow coloring for texturing on the actual layer beneath. Probably make a good tattoo as well. What else did we do that stream? Oh yeah, I guess it was a bug themed stream that day. This one's a scorpion of sorts. And a couple ideas from people who were watching. We incorporated into the design, like giving it grabby digits, and for the stinger, kind of like a thing that looks like a head with something coming out of it. And I knew one of these was purple. I guess it was this one. Another thing that I've mentioned a couple times when we started messing around with this style, the reason why I decided to try and do something different and adapt it for kind of horror creature design is one, because kind of my wheelhouse is creature design versus humanoid characters. I feel like I do creatures a little bit more naturally, but I had just recently, within the last several months, finished playing through the RPG Look Outside, which is very like cosmic horror, eldritch horror themed, and so this was a pretty good way to adapt those concepts in a style that I'm not normally used to creating in. And I enjoyed Look Outside quite a bit. Kufanki asks, is this for a comic or something? Nope, I just make art sometimes. Here on stream, here on my channel, we do kind of a mix of things. So I guess I'm a variety streamer of sorts. We do art sometimes, we do gaming stuff sometimes, we do chill kind of hangout and chatting streams sometimes, and we also do beatbox streams where I talk about beatboxing and we make music with my community. Kind of the, I guess, unique thing for what I do is I make royalty-free background music tracks for fellow content creators to use on streams, YouTube videos, etc. And a lot of those tracks were created using a mix of the older ones are beatbox techniques. The more recent ones is like a synthesizer and a loop station to create stuff like that. Fanky Axe, beatboxing. Yeah, there's not a lot of beatboxing VTubers out there, but there's a few. That sound you heard when you followed is actually a beatbox sound. It's a lip roll. That's where that comes from, in case you heard it when you followed. Gufanky says, it's unique to say the least. I actually didn't know there were unique ways for beatboxing. I guess it just depends on what you've seen out there, since the scene has been evolving pretty rapidly, especially as it's gotten more exposure via the internet. You know, starting in like hip hop culture in the 80s, it was a lot more simple and rudimentary as people were just kind of creating rhythms and learning how to overlay sounds. Nowadays, modern beatboxing is very complicated and incorporates so many different techniques and ways to make sounds that's not just percussion type instruments, you know, drum kit, not just kick, hat, snare. Now there's different types of bass, there's different types of non-percussive sounds that are vocalized, not vocalized. It's very diverse, and as people in the scene come up with new ways to create sounds and people incorporate those techniques, then it just kind of causes things to continue to change and evolve compared to where they started. And it's kind of neat to talk about that with the community, and for people that are interested in learning about beatboxing or getting into it, we do that on the jam streams too, where I kind of talk about like basics, practice drills, stuff like that. He says, I like your funny words, Magic Man. Oh, I don't know how to do magic, but I do make funny noises from time to time. I do need to do another jam stream. It's been a while. My stream schedule's been a little erratic due to work lately, but I try and do at least one of those jam streams a month. And we're almost at the end of May already. Alright. We'll look at one more and then start a new one. Funky says, it's just a way of saying I don't understand what you're saying, but it's cool to hear someone passionate about something. Oh, I hear that. I think it's probably not unique to just me, but being a VTuber and streamer is kind of a way for me to not only spend time in things I'm passionate about, but also to talk about it and share things with people that stop by or people that are part of the community. And that's fun. All right. I think this is from the session before. Nope, that one hasn't even been shared with the community yet. So we'll do this one instead. This was from the very first stream. Early on, a little bit more rough in design because I was still figuring out how I wanted to adapt this kind of flat 2D one color style and like negative space utilization in a way. Kind of a Cthulhu tree of sorts. Kufanki says, I mostly just draw, animate, or occasional 3D art. Tried music but dropped it. Ah, I gotcha. I used to do a lot more work with 3D stuff. I used to be a 3D modeler a long time ago, and I don't really do that anymore. Sometimes I do 2D design using 3D software, but I don't model. Which is a shame because when 3D printing took off, that would have been a really similar thing to tie into from like a hobby perspective, but there's only so many hours in a day, man. Fanky says Unc really is becoming a dino. You have no idea. I am extremely old, and it is a running joke amongst my community and my peers because I'm the oldest. Don't let the young anime boy model fool you. I'm in fact ancient and have existed since the dawn of time. Kaving says you're in your 30s. Lol. Oh no. I wish I was in my 30s. Okay. Let us move on. You know, I'm kind of curious what the oldest legit age VTuber is. It's hard to tell because not everyone like reveals their face. I have never revealed what I actually look like because that would defeat the purpose of being a VTuber. But there's got to be like some 70-year-old VTubers, right? Right? I'm not that old, but close. Friggin' senior citizen out here. All right. I didn't give too much thought about another second design because I know how long that Hydra one was going to take. Okay. Let me go abstract on this one. Kfengi says, I was half joking. You're generally old enough to be people's dads. Oh, yeah. And I don't like being reminded of that. I have to consult Urban Dictionary just so I can understand the modern lingo of what young people say. That way, when I run into them at my job, I don't look like a moron when they say things I don't understand. He says, should I speak brain rot to short circuit you? If it's like Gen Alpha stuff, that I'm not as up on. I think I understand most of the Gen Z and younger Gen Z brain rot speak, but I have not done a ton of research into a lot of the newer Gen Alpha stuff. So you can try. All right, I have no idea what this is going to turn into, so this is going to be an experiment. But we have teeth, and we have eyes. Okay, unlike the last one we did, the Hydra, where I kind of started with some simple shapes, roughed in the details, and then we figured out what it was going to be. I think for this one, I'm just going to add in details step by step and completely wing it, which is how we did some of those earlier ones I showed a second ago. I'm not even exactly sure what I want to do for the body of this thing. Kufanki says, "Yo, Unk, you ancient ASF. Bro was around before Skibidi Toilet lore dropped. Probably paid 5 cents for a Sigma meal back in Ohio. Blood remembers the invention of Riz. I remember the invention of Riz. I remember what was called swag before that. In days of ancient memes now, like original Doge. I remember the days when the most controversial thing you could do was rickroll someone back in the days of the trans. We didn't even have web series like Skibidi Toilet for our memes. Oh no. I was there when All Your Base Are Belong to Us was invented. Caramel Dancing. Star Wars Kid. The true OG memes. The start of the internet. Not to even further date myself, but I have existed since long before the internet was a thing. I had to explain to some of my coworkers what 6'7" meant recently. Someone I worked with said, "Yeah, my grandson keeps saying 6'7". What does that mean?" I said, "All right, let me explain what that means and where it came from, because I had to look it up and learn at some point." Kufinky says, "I'm just a basement dweller Gen Z." I think Gen Beta is born starting this year, the generation that comes after Alpha, which, boy, is that an unfortunate generational name, going in like the Greek alphabet, obviously, but imagine having to be your tag, generational tag being Beta. Maybe it'll mean something by the time they get older, something different than what Beta normally means, you know? Kufengi says 6'7" literally doesn't mean anything. Well, yeah, but I also had to explain where it came from. My coworkers were saying something to the effect of, "It drives me nuts when my grandkids say it all the time because it's so stupid." I said, "Hey, if you want them to stop, then just say it back to them. Say it enough times and it'll become uncool, and then the meme will die, and they'll stop saying it." I think probably Generation Beta when they get older. Actually, I don't know. Depends what AI tech does as far as the waifu thing. I think Gen Alpha, as they get a little bit older, are going to be the ones who are more exposed to like the AI potential companionship stuff, because they'll be teenagers soon. I think the oldest Gen Alphas probably are teenagers now. I don't know if they can work yet. Hey, we gotta hydrate from lava. Drink water. I still have no idea where I'm going with this. The body's obviously going to be over here. But do we want something that's got kind of like a bulkier humanoid shape? Or do I want to go like more horror-ish? Horror-ish. Maybe put a mouth down here. Kufenki says, it's kind of fascinating to realize some people won't grow up with solely human-made art. I wonder how it will affect their perception of art as a whole. That's a really good question or thought. My theory with the rise of AI, like Gen AI, and its kind of prevalence in like literally every type of media you can consume, and it's just kind of becoming more and more, unless the bubble bursts, which could very well happen. I think at some point, the people that are largely consuming media, and it's probably going to be the younger generation because they'll grow up in it, I don't think they'll be able to tell if art's human-made or AI-made. And I also don't think they'll care because it's already starting to happen now. And I'm not saying I agree, but people nowadays are starting to adopt the mentality that, oh, is the thing I'm consuming what I want? Whether it's music, art, movies, whatever, games. If it's the thing I want, I don't care how it's made. And I think at some point, people are not going to ask the question of how is it made because they won't care. Is it the thing I want? Okay, then I'm going to consume it. And that's a little bit concerning to me. It's actually very concerning. But I don't really know if we can do anything about it unless, like I said, the bubble bursts and people are no longer relying on AI-related things to make stuff. Kofinki says, will this new generation think that AI art is real art? Will they understand how many of the arguments for pro-human art? How will they understand the common arguments like artistic soul, etc.? Yeah, I don't even know if they'll know the difference unless they're taught the difference, you know? The idea of passion and soul in a creative work, which is the whole point why you create something, might not even be a concept that they understand unless people explain it to them. Hey, first bot of the day. I'm surprised it took this long. Get out of here. Yeah, I think you're right, Kufinki. The whole concept will eventually become so foreign that the people trying to explain it to the people who don't understand it are just going to seem like, you know, backwards old man yelling at cloud type things. And I don't think we're guaranteed to end up there, but I think it just needs to be a discussion. I personally think generative AI in general is, in concept, just a tool, but it's so easily abused. But we can't undo it. Like, the tech is out there, it's only going to get better. Will it replace passionate human-made art? Ultimately, I think no. But I think the perception is going to evolve over time to where people either don't know or don't care, and that's kind of sad. Well, yeah, it's definitely not like a binary discussion by any means. I think part of it is the ethical argument, right? Are you using tools in a way that is just wholesale stealing from other people, which is definitely a thing. It's one of the biggest arguments for how the models are trained. But also you have bad actors who will use whatever tools they have at their disposal if they're going to make a quick buck. And again, when people no longer care and they just care about consuming the thing, then they're also going to stop caring about what it costs or who's benefiting from it, as long as they get the thing they want. And that's dangerous. Kavenki says, for example, I don't know a world without internet, and you do. Thus, we technically live in two different worlds. I had a phone since I was like 7. Hey, you ain't slick. But you're right. You're definitely right. The whole idea of people and their exposure to technology and things technology related, I think, changes exponentially between generations. Like my generation knew time before the internet, before smart devices, when things were a lot more analog, which, again, thanks for reminding me. But imagine the generation after Beta. Was it Gamma? I don't know the Greek alphabet super well, but by the time they're around, it might be like a case of humans aren't even born without cybernetic implants from birth. You know, that type of thing. But I'm pretty sure I'll be dead by then, so that'll be something for the future generation to think about. But it's constant accelerating curve. We talk about stuff like this with my peer group, just because a lot of my friends are also artists and creators, and they see the struggle with a lot of the technology and AI type stuff, just like everybody else. I've had people straight up ask me if my music and stuff is AI. I'm at the point now where I don't get offended by that because it's so common. Like in the era of slop, like you're saying, Kufenki, it's so common that you kind of have to question things nowadays just to know if it's legitimate. So, you know, it kind of is what it is. And yeah, kids might not understand the concept of AI slop because it might be the norm. You know, AI created products, media, what have you, might be more common than human created stuff at some point, which would be terrible. I hope we don't end up there. But if so, then the whole concept of slop kind of goes away if it's the norm on its face. I would hope that doesn't happen, but because corporations are incentivized to use Gen AI stuff because it's cheaper than having legit artists and paying them, you know, that's the slippery slope. It's Hollywood doesn't care if something was made legitimately by an artist or if it was made for cheap by a machine. All they care is how much it costs. So if anything, we might see the further rise of independent media, studios, artists, etc., that are not tied down to just the concept of how much does it cost. We'll see. Kufinki says, I think the best concept is the concept of video games and playing outside. Adults constantly talk about the beauty of childhood and outdoors, but kids of my generation never cared. We stayed home and played anyways. Oh yeah, that's probably going to compound considerably over time to where people didn't grow up with the concept of being outside, which is insane. Like, I don't have any kids, but my brother does, and we've had conversations like this a lot about what it's going to mean for, like, his kid, probably kids in the future, at every stage of their life, and how it compared to ours, you know? what is going to be the norm? These are all very interesting things to talk about. We'll just have to see where we end up. All right, let's see our progress. Gufenki says, I went outside a lot as a kid. I was kind of an anomaly of my gen, and playing outside and being bored really builds creativity and social skills. The more I look back, the more interesting I realize it is. I think that's definitely true. And, not to get on a soapbox, because I'm not here to preach to people, but I think the idea of the real world experiences, whether it's going outside and, just being around other people and social situations or whatnot, it builds, like you said, experience and awareness and life skills of just existing out there. And I've always said that if people don't have those experiences when they go through life, in general, life is going to be tougher because those experiences aren't going to be there, right? From a socialization perspective, from a simple, should I walk down the street and pay attention to my surroundings type of scenario. And I don't know what the answer to that is when it's becoming more normalized that people don't have those experiences. You can't just say, well, kids should all just go play outside, because the world now, at least here in the States where I live, the world is not the same as it was when I was younger. So I feel like the way people look at things has to adapt to the changing world, but how and what's the most logical thing that makes sense? Don't ask me. That's a pretty complex issue to try and navigate. But it's good that people talk about it. Kufanki says, I used to socialize with friends and make up games when there was a lack of stimulation. Nowadays, I'm a real isolationist. I don't really do it because of social anxiety type things. I can talk to people if I want to. Usually I'm home because of physical issues. I gotcha. The big factor for Gen Alpha that I guess we won't know really until there's studies done a long time from now when they're, adults and out there in the workforce, etc. The pandemic, worldwide, no matter where you live, the pandemic was a pretty big factor in shaping formative years for a lot of those kids. And it's going to be interesting to see what that means later. The socialization and the environments they grew up in, or for those few years around the pandemic, were very different than pretty much every norm, because the pandemic was not normal. And I think ultimately it was not good. I think their development suffered for that, because I had family that had young kids in grade school and whatnot during the pandemic, and it was not easy for them. think they've kind of come out of it now and whatnot, but it's still part of their development that was affected by a pretty large scale event. And we're probably going to be seeing fallout from that for decades as those generations get older and whatnot. It affected everybody, but I especially feel bad for the young kids because, yeah, a lot was different for a few years. And yeah, I assume what you mean, Kufenki, is not only just the developmental fallout and whatnot, but physically too. I know people that are still suffering physical symptoms and fallout from the pandemic. And the idea that it was not a big deal or didn't affect anybody seriously, which thankfully I don't know anybody who says that, but I know for a fact that's not true. It's crazy. Hopefully nothing like that happens anytime soon. Okay, we're going tentacle arms because why not? Similar texturing style here, just like for the Hydra heads, but kind of a bit more like a undulating shape and kind of texture for these. Kufenki says, funny enough, my physical health went downhill after the pandemic because I was stuck at home for so long during my developmental years with so little exercise and nutrition. My legs got weak and painful, and pain was a feedback loop. The less I moved, the weaker and more painful it got until today. I see. You have to go for like physical therapy or stuff to kind of work through all of that. That's rough. I think that was probably not just, isolated cases, one-offs here or there. I think that probably happened to a lot of people. Like I said, it was definitely a large, significant event. I know some people close to me that didn't make it out of the pandemic. So, I don't really talk about stuff like that here on my stream, but when I've gotten into conversations with people who maybe didn't think it was worth taking seriously, you can think whatever you want, but, I lost some people. Alright, I'm going to keep adding some detail and texture in here. But so far, this one is turning out alright. Adding in a color layer on this one will, I think, work well with the texture. early, I could see like a lot of the physical fallout from being on like prescribed painkillers as a young person during developmental years. That sucks. Hopefully you've gotten past it by now. Well, I appreciate that, Gufinki. It it is what it is. You know, it was not easy in a lot of ways for a lot of people, and by far for me personally, I did not have it that bad. I actually have never gotten COVID, but I saw its effects all around me enough to take it seriously. You know, the surreal part, if it makes sense to you, is it seems like it was so long ago, but it wasn't. You know, the world didn't really kind of return to more normalcy till, I want to say, like 2023-ish. But it almost feels like it was decades ago now, which is just crazy. Ah, I see. Still things to deal with. You know, that's an unfortunate, but hopefully over time, you know, things will get better, and then ultimately it won't be a thing. Okay, we'll keep working through and adding detail, and eventually we'll go in to do color. Fenky says, not to be dumping, but yeah, just seeing people continue school while I stay at home was a bit sad sometimes. Not sure if Unk understands. Maybe not from firsthand experience, but as far as kind of feeling like you can be left behind, you know, in any context, I do get that. Those years during the pandemic, in addition to kind of that idea too, it just seemed like time moved differently for a while, and I think everyone can kind of relate to that, you know, in some way. But like I said, hopefully we never have to deal with something like that again anytime soon. Kufinki says I was the highest in my grade and everything, and boom, I'm at home. Yeah, it was definitely disruptive. Seeing people who had kids in like I said, grade school at the time and whatnot, It was almost as if those years when all that was going on and whatnot kind of just went into the void. Like, I think their kids are fine now, but it was just such an abrupt change for everybody in like every aspect. What color should we do for this one? Let's try dark red. We could do more than one color underneath too. That might be an interesting experiment. This red shade and kind of veering into like fire elemental territory, which I don't think we've done one that would be kind of like a fire element creature so far. Kufenki says, my buddy just said to me, use this as an excuse to start that animation channel you wanted since you live in a basement all day. Well, sure. I mean, it's better than not making something out of, you know, your situation if you have the resources to do that, but for some people it's not that easy, right? Like, I wish I could do this all day where I just yap on stream and make stuff, but like, I don't have the ability to do that because I need to eat. So I gotta go to my Earth job all day long. Hence the erratic stream schedule I mentioned. Okay, we're gonna try something different here. We'll do it on separate layers, so if it sucks, I can just delete it. I'm gonna go orange underneath, kind of keeping the fire theme. We'll see how it looks. Funky says, yeah, oh no, the concept of getting a job sounds scary. Can't I just live off my parents till I'm 85? My dad will live to 400. Fortunately, no. If it were that easy, more people would be doing it. Okay, we're gonna go under this with a layer of yellow. Fire colors. Kufanki says, maybe I'll be like those obnoxious digital nomads, sell courses on how to sell courses. You could. All it would cost you is your self-respect. All right. And that's not bad. I think we dropped the transparency a little bit. Get those different colors to kind of mesh together. I think that might actually look all right. Kufanki says, who needs self-respect when you have money? I'm not a good person to answer that question. You gotta ask a rich person. All right. That was a pretty unexpected start to finish design. Let's put this in its own folder. Oh, that's kind of neat. I've never taken the main layer off to see what we did underneath. That looks like a fire hair monster. Okay, we had the signature. That's important. So let's do kind of a wrap up of what we've done. I'm just about at time before I gotta jump off. I need to go to the gym and work my old man bones. So we did 2 designs over the course of the stream, which is about par. I think as I do these more, I'll get faster with it, but first one, I mentioned that I wanted to do a Hydra type design. So our end result is this kind of, maybe a water element Hydra, I guess. Kufanki says, would you be a digital nomad and sell courses? Heard those bastards make 400 grand a month sometimes. Yeah, it's probably not true, but you're right, it is fascinating. Nah, I couldn't do something like that. There's no way I could be passionate about something like that just for the sake of making money. I'm not saying I'm on some sort of like ethical high horse, but if I'm not at least 60% mentally invested in what I'm doing, I can't do it when it comes to like a job or money. I would rather be a person with integrity and poor than a rich person with no morals. That's just me though. Other people want to get the bag and do it by whatever means necessary. All right. I'm not going to judge too hard. All right, so moving on from the Hydra. Again, we were just doing this one, so I don't feel like I'm going to talk too much about it. But unlike the first one that had a pretty clear kind of defined creature archetype, this one is just kind of a monster slash maybe demon based design, and our color palette kind of leans it more towards like a fire elemental affinity, which they don't have to be elementally aligned by any means, but sometimes that kind of just shakes out that way. Make sure and save that. I would like to do more practice with this. Again, this isn't my normal drawing style, but I think it's probably more distinct than the stuff I normally work on here on stream. But I still need to practice more and learn how to flesh out the techniques a bit. Goofenki says, a lot of it is so fake it feels depressing. Like, I'm sure you know the side of the internet I'm talking about, but the Instagram influencers who promote crypto and say they're building inner peace and pseudo-spirituality, it's hard to describe type of person. Oh, I know exactly the type of person you're describing. I tend to view those people with a big lens of caution. Just because someone can promote everything under the sun and claim that as a result they're living a glamorous or successful lifestyle, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's true. And I've been around long enough to kind of be familiar with the snake oil sales pitch, and that practice has been a thing since the dawn of time. People selling stuff because it'll solve your problems or it'll get you something that you want that you don't currently have, but all it really does in a lot of cases is benefit the person who's behind the scam. So I see that, and I see the cycle of, oh, all you need to do is this, that, and the other, and you'll make $500,000 a month. Could it be true? Sure. Am I going to be really skeptical of something like that when it sounds so easy? Of course. If it was that easy, everyone would be rich. So kind of it is just not being sucked into the funnel of consuming content that's going to put that in front of you and try and convince you that it's the answer to all your problems. Not to get preachy on you, but if it's never that easy. And I wish I could tell you that just working hard is going to solve all your problems, but it's not that simple either, Oh yeah, it's not just products sometimes that those types of influencers are selling. Sometimes it's a mindset, right? Or the grind set mentality that you see in a lot of the influencers. You need to change the way you think and the way you view people and interact with people and do all this stuff, and it's gonna make you a millionaire. It's gonna, again, solve your problems. I don't subscribe to that. I feel like if it was that simple, again, everybody would be rich. And so much of what that type of content promotes is a real abandonment of humanity, in my opinion. And especially now, in these current weird and stressful times, I think humanity is something people need to remember to maintain more than anything else. If they don't, then that's not good. But it's a fight. It's definitely a fight. I'm just an anime boy on the internet. But if hanging out and watching me draw stupid pictures and yap about stupid things makes you forget how much things suck sometimes, then that's the least I can kind of offer in what I do. Alright. with that, not to be all philosophical, but I think that will be a good point to call it for today's stream. Let me see who is online that we can raid and spread some chill vibes to before we wrap up for today. Let's see. Illiston is currently streaming. They are like, Elite Dangerous. I've seen that game before. Let us go see how the ship shenanigans are going on Illiston's stream. Let me cue that up. Let me pause the music. And we will go to the outro screen. And with that, we'll wrap up. Thanks to all the folks who came by and hung out. Well, why is that muted? That should be muted. Okay, you should be able to hear the theme with my closing screen here. We will be back on Sunday, I believe. And we'll be, hopefully, as long as my computer doesn't have any issues, should be picking up with Monster Hunter Stories 3. It's been a while, but we continue on our playthrough, and that should be a good time. Again, thanks for hanging out and chatting today. Hope everyone has a good rest of your morning, day, or evening, and I will catch you folks soon. Now let's go see how Illiston's doing in space. Catch you folks later.